Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the government and political correspondent, and my guest today is the mayor of Hudson, Rich O'Connor. Rich, thanks for coming back on the show.
Jamie, thank you for having me.
It seemed like it's been a long time, but you were elected about a year and a half ago.
Right.
And that's an April 2016 election. You take office or get the oath within a couple weeks, right?
Yes.
And so in May was your first full month of meetings. And based on the headlines and the articles, you haven't had a paucity of issues anyway. It's not like you're sitting around. It's not Mayberry anyway.
That's right. No, things are pretty hectic right now. Things are coming at us pretty fast. That's a good thing.
Yes, and I think you laid out for us a plan in December 2016. I think that some of those items, I think one of them that we're going to start right off with that is great is you said in December you wanted to see something happening at the dog track, and now that was announced a couple months ago anyway.
Yep.
And people are ready to hear some details, and when are they going to see backhoes and shovels in the ground?
Right. So, well, right now they still have not closed on the sale of the property, but everything up to this point is complete. Everything up to the point that is necessary for the closing is complete. The city's done all the work that we needed to do. The tax increment financing district has been established, and what we're waiting for right now. And there's a flurry of activity with the sellers and the buyers trying to get this closing done as quickly as possible. The baseball season will start next spring as soon as college is out, and so we need to have that field ready for the first game.
So thinking would be by mid-May.
Yeah, mid to late May, maybe early June. The league itself is comprised of college students.
Right.
And so as soon as I think the league actually starts as soon as the College World Series is over.
And to give the people some sense of, baseball, professional baseball has changed a lot over the 4 or 5 decades that I've followed it anyway since a kid. There's a lot fewer minor league teams, and there's AAA, AA, single A, but then there's a level, and this would be a level below single A, is basically.
Yeah, you could say that probably. What this league is essentially is a group of kids. Major League Baseball can draft immediately out of high school.
Okay.
This league is a group of kids that have been drafted already, and they can then go on to college unless the team that drafted them wants them to start into their system right away, or perhaps they negotiate and they may say, I want to get my college done, or at least a couple of years of college in first. It's one of 2 leagues, the way I understand it, that are sanctioned by the NCAA that still allow for their students to continue to play baseball in the summer without losing their eligibility for continuing in college.
So the age of the players that Hudson folks would be seeing would be somewhere 19 to 24, right in there?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And so now we focus on the baseball, but that's because are they going to be using like the area that's in where the track is now?
Exactly. The infield of the track right now will be the baseball field.
Okay. And then how much of the current building will be used for spectators?
That's a good question, and they've gone back and forth on this. There's a prospective buyer for the building, and that buyer, from what I understand, is going to be a brewery. And the brewery has kind of initially said that they needed to take the building down, and they said, no, we can use it. No, we're going to take it down. No, we can repurpose it. We can use it. So as far as actual spectators up in there, it would not be part of the stadium itself, but it will be. You can see where the building is right now, and the grandstand would be up abutted to it, and it runs along the third base side out to left field, and that facility then would be used. The upper floor right now, the way the proposal goes, hopefully I'm not talking out of school on this, would be utilized as an event center that can hold up to 2,000 people, which this town desperately needs, and obviously could be divvied up then into smaller rooms, but then would also be available to watch the games for people that wanted to bring groups up there.
Well, I would agree. An event center is something that we don't have any place where more than 300 people can gather and eat and be served alcohol.
Right.
Those options.
It'd and be stay.
Yeah.
And stay.
And stay, right.
We don't, we certainly have enough, well, I don't want to say enough, but we certainly have a significant number of hotels here but none that are big enough to hold a convention or a huge event.
Right. Okay.
And
So,
by the way, there is a hotel that's being proposed that will be adjoining that building.
so you're clicking off the different items, a ball field with a grandstand that would seat a couple thousand.
They're talking like 4,000 right now.
Yep. And so that's even bigger than the new stadium at the high school.
Right.
So, all right. So, major or professional baseball, draftees playing, and then an event center with a hotel. What other businesses would be there?
Well, I can't divulge. We do have one major anchor tenant that originally wanted to buy one building, space for one building that would be about 200,000 square feet, and it's my understanding now that that entity is saying that they will probably need two buildings that same size, 200,000 square feet, which takes up a lot of the room out there, and that anchor tenant is a significant tenant.
At what point does the zoning get changed? Is it like the chicken and the egg with the closing of the property, or is there already proposals in the works that would allow flexibility to increase the number of these large tenants?
There's enough flexibility there, and we just have to wait and see exactly who the entities are that are coming in, but everything is set for the initial plans the way they are right now.
Because some of these, and I don't know all the city's zoning categories, but commercial is very close to retail and so forth.
Right.
But is there going to be any like multifamily housing or?
That's a good question. There's part of the current proposal calls for condominiums there, and the condominiums to some extent had been requested by the anchor tenant, where they believe that they're going to need some temporary space for people that would be coming in, that would be working here for 6 months to a year.
Right.
That same entity is also going to be taking up a significant number of space or number of rooms at the hotel that's proposed there. They will have a lease that will cover a certain number of rooms annually that will help bring a
But
good
less likely to be low density, single family.
Right.
That's
No,
not going to be
that's
part of
not
this
in-
at all.
No.
No. All right. Anything else that on the dog track timing wise? I know nothing wants to be jinxed or anything like that, but we've been hearing about for a couple of months, and would you expect this to be wrapped up by the end of the year?
Oh,
given
yes.
that you've got the
Yeah.
May deadline. So.
They need to start work on the baseball field. From what I understand, the footings need to be put in within the next couple months before the snow flies.
Right. I know that Halloween is always usually a big cutoff for that type of thing. All right.
So a very exciting proposal. Right now people are really, as you mentioned, they're focused on the baseball, but this is much bigger than the baseball. The baseball is kind of the sexy part of what's going on right now and has caught most of the attention. One thing that I would like to add is that in this year's Major League All-Star game, the two starting pitchers both came out of this league.
Oh, okay. Wow. So there is advancement, and I know that some of these rookies can skip levels pretty fast.
Right.
Once they get out. But one thing you mentioned about the Tax Incremental Finance District, the TIF district as it's called, just briefly, how is that going to work?
Well, essentially how TIF works is that the property value is frozen at its current rate. Property taxes will continue to be paid at the current rate. Okay, we know that by investing in the property, we're going to overall increase the value of that property, and hopefully very quickly. And when that happens, the additional taxes that would be paid on the increased value would be pumped right back into the project. So it's an incentive to get developers here to be able to start the construction that they want, do the development that they want, and it's an incentive on our side to be able to get that done, to get the right people in here to do that.
So just to be clear, they pay, as the value of the property goes up, they pay that to, and then it's paid back to them, or is it just considered a wash and it's all deferred for off into the
I don't
future?
know about the logistics on that.
Yeah.
I just know that the amount of money that they would be paying on the increase would be pumped back into the project itself to help pay the project down.
Basically, they're paying themselves.
Pretty much,
Right.
right.
But then it's on for how many years?
By law, we can do 27 years. The current proposal is calling for somewhere between 17 and 20 years, and we're hearing that that's probably a pretty conservative number.
Okay.
So to put it in perspective, the last tax increment finance district we had here is the business park, and that was paid down in, I think it was 12 years. So by law, they could have gone 27. They paid it all down in 12 years, and that means at that point in time, the entire piece of property goes back on the tax rolls, and we get the benefit of all that tax revenue.
And by we, it would be all the
All the taxing districts.
taxing districts, all right. And city and school district.
And school district and county.
Yeah, all right, very
and,
good.
And the technical college.
All right. Well, good developments. And now moving on, because there's been a lot of issues, and I know this is something that has been brewing. I guess I'll use that word since we've got breweries we've been talking about,
Right.
both downtown and then now at the dog track. So parking, downtown parking. You know, we hear a lot about it in Hudson, and there's been studies. We've spent thousands of dollars on studies. Where do things stand now for Hudson parking?
Okay, so we have been hearing, obviously, from our constituency that parking is a big issue downtown. And our parking study indicated that we have a deficit of about 350 stalls, okay? Number of issues that are involved in that. But let's just separate this into two different pieces. Number one is something's got to be done with the current meter situation that we have downtown. That has to be improved.
They're very outdated.
They're very outdated, which means that there's equipment malfunction. At any given time, we might have 20 to 25% of the meters malfunctioning. That means a couple things. It means that it's reduced revenue,
Right.
and we do get revenue from that, from the meters. It also means that our meter readers are spending a lot of their time repairing those, fixing those meters
Instead of enforcement.
Exactly. Okay. So what we're looking at right now is we're looking at fixing the meter situation downtown. Bringing in high tech is the focus where we're aimed right now. No more of the pumping nickels, dimes, quarters into the meters. We hope to have stanchions where you can come and put a credit card in, punch your numbers in or whatever, and then not worry about it.
That's what the bigger cities have. So.
Right, exactly. St. Paul, Minneapolis, kind of what we're looking at. It gives us the ability to do a number of different things. Incrementally increase the cost of parking, and with technology like that, it can be by pennies instead of nickels and dimes and quarters, right?
Right.
Enforcement is much easier for the meter readers, and it means that people can park for extended periods of time without having to go back and continue to feed the meter. Along with that, we're looking at increasing the hours that we would be charging for parking downtown.
I always wondered about that. We've got some great restaurants downtown
Right.
that have opened just in the last couple of years that have increased the number of people going. And so that seems to me your biggest demand for parking spaces seem to be that 5 to 8, and yet the meters only go till 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's right. So the hours would likely be extended. We're certainly looking at that. We would probably start charging on Saturdays as well. It's a very busy time downtown. And so that's one piece of it, all right? That's what needs to be fixed first. Right. And we also have identified a number of stalls where we don't charge any fee for parking at all, and those then would also probably be covered under the new technology. The second piece, of course, is are we going to try to build a structure? All right. It's very difficult. It's a difficult discussion to think about putting in a garage or a ramp downtown for a number of reasons. First of all, it is a huge expense, $6 to $8 million, maybe $9 million to put in a garage downtown that would be sufficient to cover the remainder of the deficit that we have in the stalls. That means that we would have to bond for that, and of course that means that we're adding taxes to our individuals out there. We don't, I don't like that idea. But if we bond, it would probably be for 20 years minimum, 20 to 30 years on a bonding authority for something like that. And now you also have an issue of perhaps technology. How long will it be before we have driverless cars that you can just send home?
Right.
Right. The younger generation, the millennials, are into the technology. They're into Uber and things like that, Lyft, and although we don't have those here in town, there are no restrictions.
Right.
It's just driven by demand right now. It won't be long before we see those types of services here in our city. I don't really care to be bonding for something that goes out 20 to 30 years. That
Obsolete.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the discussion. Another part is, of course, we have retailers up on the hill that are saying, wait a minute, we're already paying for our parking up here, right? They have their parking lots, they have their, a lot of surface parking for all the development up on the hill. And they have been pretty vocal about not wanting to be taxed to pay for parking downtown to provide parking for their competitors.
Right.
So now, having said all that, we have been in discussions with groups that are interested in coming in and providing that parking for us. So private entities that would come in and provide that parking. Our discussions so far, again, I hope I'm not ahead of my skis here on this, but have revolved around the cost to us would be the use of the property. We would sell the property or lease the property or give the property to any entity that we're negotiating with that might want to come in and build some type of ramp or garage,
Right.
some type of surface perhaps.
Well, obviously, I mean, they're big money makers in the cities, and
Right.
where property is way higher value. But again, it's usually private entities. You don't have municipalities like generally in that business.
Right.
So
if we were to do, no matter what we do, let's just say the city were to build something, it doesn't matter who owns it, we then have to drive patrons to those facilities. Because no matter where it is, people are still going to have to walk, which is the biggest complaint. We don't really want to walk. It's hard to find a parking spot close to where we ultimately want to be. So people have to walk, and they're still going to have to walk from any type of facility that we have.
right.
Okay. So what we need to do is provide an incentive to drive people, patrons, to whatever facility that we might have, and that again goes back to the issue of raising the cost of parking at the meters.
Right. And then the issue with that is you also find out in basic economics, you raise the price, then what does that do to demand? All of a sudden, those people who didn't want to walk more than 3 blocks, they're willing to walk 5 blocks to avoid paying,
Right.
$4 an hour or whatever
Right.
it might be. So,
And it won't be that.
Yeah.
It won't be $4 an hour.
okay, all right. Well,
I think it's 50 cents an hour right now, isn't it? Or
I want to say, yeah, I think
it's
it's
a
a
quarter
quarter
for
for
a
a
half
half
hour,
hour.
right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's close to that. Cities like River Falls did away with their meters.
right.
But again, they don't have the kind of large entities downtown. And I know of other communities. I was from one in southern Wisconsin. Last time I visited Monroe, Wisconsin, they were tearing down their parking structure, which was a 2-story ramp thing. And it was built at a time when their clinic was downtown. They had a lot more people going than when the clinic moved to the outskirts of town. All of a sudden, now you have less demand and
Right.
nobody using it. And so, yeah, a big issue. But you've had a lot of surveys, and so you've got all this information about how far people are willing to walk and all that. And good luck with that. What would be the timing on that as far as?
Well, I would hope that we will
The
have...
first part you mentioned about the technology.
I know that Randy Morissette is chairing that committee, and there are some local folks downtown that are involved in the parking committee, some business people as well, and they're looking right now at getting an RFP out here pretty quick for the technology.
Okay.
So, and that's going to run $300,000 to $400,000 is what our consultant told us that did the study.
And is that something that gets bonded and then paid back fairly quickly, or is it just something that you try to absorb in a couple years' budgets? Or
We have money, revenue that comes in from parking already,
Right.
that can be dedicated to that, get us going, and then the council just has to decide from there how we're going to do that.
right, because the
It could-
payback period for these new meters is going to be much shorter than what it would be for a ramp.
Absolutely,
So-
especially, I mean, when you consider, first of all, you take you no longer have malfunctioning meters.
Right.
That's a big impact. Extending hours and increasing the actual cost, yeah, it would be a very short.
You could
payback,
easily double the revenue, and then
I'm pretty sure.
yeah. All right. So one of the things that drives the demand for parking is development. So and split that up, downtown and other. We started the the interview off with development at the dog track, which is, one of your priorities. But is there anything brewing downtown?
Well, we have been talking with a group that has exclusive negotiating rights with us until the end of this year for the property that sits directly behind the parking area that sits directly behind the fire station.
Okay.
And they are talking about a project going in there that would be a very significant increase to revenue downtown, to overall taxing downtown. But again, that could be a TIF district, probably likely to be a TIF district, would increase residential downtown as well. And the nice thing about it, I mean, there are several nice things about it. We have people that are actually living down there, which is a good thing. We are taking some properties that certainly were productive, but can be more productive. And we're refreshing what's happening downtown. And, that needs to happen. You look at any thriving community, and they can't just languish with what they've got. They have got to continue to refresh. And that's part of what this proposal is all about. And architecture is going to be compatible with what we have downtown right now. And it will be a nice addition if the
Does that
project
mean that fire or EMS moves out of there?
No. They would maintain that current building. It's not going to impact the parking that they have or the space that they would need for their facility. It's just that one area in the very back that I think it's 46 stalls, parking stalls.
Okay.
And the project
they would add stalls, or they would completely use up the ones that are there, or is it neutral?
Well, they're negotiating for that property, so they will be absorbing that property. But part of the negotiations right now is that they must give back at least the same number of stalls that we have, and of course we're telling them we want more. And what they will have to do over there is build a garage.
Okay.
They definitely would be building a garage to accommodate the people that they would have down there.
All right. Now, what about other development?
Riverfront is going along pretty well, and you're going to see some interesting things there as well. They're going to bust back walls. The advocated for river towns somewhere along the line turn their backs to the river, their front door essentially, and so they're right now proposing to make that the front door for entrance at least to the lower level of that building. Okay. And that would be fantastic. Blow the walls out, put windows in.
This is right across from the public boat launch.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Anything else?
Well, we're doing a study right now for Lakefront Park and for utilization of of the property that we have along the riverway. And that study is encompassing all the property from from the exit north of the freeway all the way up to the railroad tracks. So just beyond the beach house.
Okay.
Which will obviously include the dike and will include the other boat launch, perhaps, at least with some ideas what we might be able to do over there at King's.
Well, there's already a walking trail that goes pretty far up. And on First Street side, you have, businesses in there, professional offices that have parking. Right. And it's kind of extended. Do you see that conversion of any more of that older residential on First Street to?
Not necessarily the current residential, but there are some buildings certainly there that go just north of Riverfront, or the plaza rather. And so there are some properties that I would hope will take a look at what we're doing there, and especially given that we're likely proposing a TIF district, that they would take advantage of that and piggyback on what we're trying to do there.
Okay. Talk about budget then, because we're entering the fall. We're taping this at the end of August, but this will be replayed in September, and the city is on a fiscal budget that matches the calendar.
Right.
So you're trying to get your different departments submitting things and then making recommendations, and so where are we at in that process?
So what I've asked our council members to do is each of them prepare the budget for the departments that they oversee. And that process, to some extent, has begun. I can talk a little bit about what I know. and then we'll come together and figure out what our budget's going to be. I want everybody to understand I campaigned on saying I want to keep taxes down. Certainly we've had some things here happening in the school district for sure, where we've had some increases, and the last thing our folks need is every unit of government coming in with big increases, right?
Right.
So we, it's been, taxes are always at the forefront of everything that I consider. The developments that we're talking about are ultimately going to increase our tax base. I want to increase our tax base. I think it's important also that people understand that single-family housing does not do much to increase the tax base. Carmichael Ridge, will that have a big impact on our tax base? No, not really. Initially, perhaps, but then once you start in with the maintenance and everything else, single-family homes, for the most part, are a net neutral for our budget, meaning the cost is the. So what we need to do is find other ways to bring taxes in here, either concentrated housing, we don't have much room for that, or the commercial development, which is where I like to focus, and that was what I ran on. Also trying to, piggybacking with keeping the taxes down for our citizens. I don't want to see people that were born and raised here being pushed out of their homes because of increased taxes. Nobody does.
Right.
But we also know that the cost of things go up. One of the things that is critical to us is that when I first came on here, I think I was asked what I thought about reducing services, and I said we're pretty lean, and we are lean. We're still very lean. We haven't added much since, if anything, really since the recession, when we started taking away jobs, reducing our staff overall. So what we're finding right now is that the current full-time staff that we have, especially our professional department head staff, are underpaid relative to the communities around us. What does that mean? It means we have a hard time attracting and a hard time retaining quality staff. And we need to be able to attract quality staff here. We're blessed with great staff right now. But unfortunately, we're going to see some of these people retiring. We've got some that are close to retirement. We just saw Denny Darnold retire. We were very fortunate to get Mike Johnson in, who is just a gem that was born and raised here in Hudson, and fortunately wanted to make this his home for his family.
Right.
But I sat down with Devin Willey, our city administrator, and we were going through, he did a study with our surrounding communities to find out what the market rate was for some of these professionals that we
Like Public
have.
Works, police chief, so forth.
Exactly. And what we've found is that we are right now about I think it was $106,000, maybe $109,000 below market for those department heads.
Okay.
All right. And I don't know if
Cumulatively.
Cumulative, yeah. I don't know if that included Devin.
Okay.
I can't remember if it did or not, but one thing for sure is our city administrator has taken on the role of two of those positions, one being human resources and the other is city administrator. We're paying him less than a new hire for either one of those positions would cost us. That we need to focus on in this budget cycle. We need to make sure that we are paying our full-time employees what they need to be paid to be up to speed relative to the market around us.
And give us some sense of relationship to that 109,000 increase. What for those salaries, for those important positions? What is it to the overall budget of the city?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's 109,000, 106,000.
I know, but I mean, what's your overall city budget total?
The city budget right now is, I think, $8.5 million. You add in, this is what we can levy for. You add in the cost of debt, and I think it goes to $10 million. Okay, so
we're talking about 1% of the budget, roughly overall.
Sure, right.
Yeah. Okay.
but I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, except for there are so many other things that are out there that are happening out there right now that are going to be involved in this budget. As an example, as I said, I would get back to you about certain things that I know are coming our way. The police chief, Marty Jensen, is requesting 2 to 3 more officers. And that's going to be at somewhere between 110, 120,000, maybe 130,000 per, given salary and benefits. Okay. You add that into the budget, you've got a significant increase there as well. We are not at levy limits at this point, but we're going to be very close to levy limits. The whole EMS discussion means that we're going to be spending a lot more on EMS, and that is exponential growth in the cost of that over the next several years. And we didn't really have a chance to have a full-blown conversation, public conversation about the total cost of this, but it's going to be an additional cost of 1.2 to 1.5 million over the next 5 years, and that number is going to continue to go up.
Just the increase or the total?
The total cost. What did I say? Increase? The
No,
total cost.
I just want to be clear is that that's a cumulative 1.2 to 1.5 spread out over 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
All right.
And we're finding that we're below market for some of the services that the EMTs are providing, as well as paramedics as well. So that's going to be problematic in that in the discussion we had people saying, a lot of people in the community were saying we're willing to pay more in taxes in order to retain the service. The problem is that within the next few years, we're not going to be able to increase taxes to the extent that we would need to in order to pay for that service alone.
Then you're looking at referendum.
Without even talking about any of the other adjustments. So within the next 3 to 5 years, according to our budget director, within the next 3 to 5 years, just that service alone is going to eat up our entire levy cushion. Okay, so, and what that means is that there are two things that we talk about, the mill rate and the levy limit. So the mill rate is whatever we charge per thousand on property. We can, essentially, we can raise that mill rate to whatever we want it to be. Right now it's at $5.02 or $5.03 per thousand. Okay. We could go to, as a body, we could go to 6, okay, 7, except for statutorily, we're going to be stuck at about 5.7, I think is the number. And that means that within the next 2 to 3 years, just the cost of EMS alone is going to eat up all of that cushion between 5.02 and 5.7.
Okay.
All right, and we have, the cushion has been established over years, has been accumulated over years because we have not hit levy limits. So for every year that we don't hit a levy limit, we get to bank that amount of money, kind of a way of putting it, that we can tap later on. Okay, that cushion will be absorbed completely within 3 to 5 years. That's without any additional increases for any other services in the city. That does not take into consideration our generally a 2% increase for wages and salaries.
Right.
It does not include any equipment that we would need for any of our departments. You start adding that in, and all of a sudden that cushion goes away even quicker.
Right.
That's what we're up against right now. And to some extent, I mean, I'm a very optimistic person. I don't want to hang a dark cloud over us, but this budget discussion is going to be very trying because everybody's going to come in asking for some type of increase. You add in, you know, I mean, the room that we're given right now, I think the total is like, the cushion is like $800,000, somewhere in that range, okay? You figure that adding 2 to 3 police officers is going to take what percent of that cushion? 40% of that cushion? And then the increase, the cost that is coming for EMS just for the next year, I mean, it could be a lot sooner than what we're anticipating.
And that's if you're dividing up a defined pie. But if you grow the pie, then you can do some of these things.
Exactly.
And growing the pie gets back to our earlier conversations about increasing the tax base.
Right. Now, growing the pie is a little difficult. It's challenging for us because, you know, we are pretty much at our growth potential right now is just about eaten up given our current boundaries without annexing any additional property. And annexation, of course, costs money. And you know, and where do you do it? You know, so we certainly have that piece of property at Vine and Carmichael, but you know, that wouldn't come to fruition for a while. And you know,
it's kind of an island right now, a little bit of township that's
It really is. Yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of it is an
surrounded by
island.
city.
We got a couple little areas like that, but that's the biggest probably. That's actually surrounded by city limits. So that's, and then you talk about TIF. So when we talk about, and I don't want people to be confused about this. So the dog track gets developed. We go back to the TIF discussion. That property value is frozen at what it is currently. The revenue coming in, tax revenue from that property right now is at about $100,000 a year, a little bit more than that.
Right.
That's what it's going to be frozen at until that TIF district is paid down. Now, again, to put that into perspective, that property value has been decreasing over the years since that dog track closed down, 15, 16 years ago.
Right.
And has just been declining over a period of time. So before people get up in arms about, wait a minute, we've got to have that on the tax rolls, it's been off, we haven't had the benefit of the actual
There
value
hasn't
of
been
that
significant
property
taxes off of that.
No, and we will get it. It will be a significant amount of money when that TIF district is retired. Same thing perhaps with downtown with the development that we talked about down there. The property values will be frozen at what they are right now. They're going to pump additional money in there and increase overall the value of that property, but we won't see the benefit of that for a few years to come yet.
And about the time that a child being born now graduates from high school.
Right.
Now, which
toss into the
happens
budget.
fast. but-
Yeah, yeah. Somehow it slows down when they get into college when you're paying for those.
That's right.
All of a sudden that slows down a lot.
Where are we at on the TIFs for, Uline and GM?
Okay, so that's the business park, and that's what I referenced before. That's the last TIF district that we have, and that was retired back in the mid to late 2000s. Okay, so that property is all added into our tax base right now. Okay, that TIF district was retired very early. Okay. Now, some of the other things that are in front of us relative to the budget are, we've had a study on our fire department, and of course, with the growing community that we have, we're finding that having the fire department located, centralized in downtown is not efficient in getting to the communities that it needs to serve, the neighborhoods, first of all, in Hudson, as well as the outlying communities that are part of our service area. And so it's been suggested that we build a new fire station somewhere else. And the cost of that is going to be $6 to $8 million probably as well. We have that piece of property up on Ward Avenue that I would like to take a look at for the fire station. Ward Avenue being right off the southwest corner of the old golf club.
Okay.
And the owners of the golf course at the time, the Hansons, sold that piece of property to us when Mayor Burchell was still in office. And given, with the notion in mind that we will likely need that for either EMS or for fire. To me, it makes more sense to put our fire up there because that needs to be located up there. Unfortunately, the size of the property itself is not large enough to accommodate both.
Okay.
So I think our EMS can still be served well from, especially given that they can move around. They don't have to be right there at the station at all times. They can be up in different parts of
Right.
the community. Fire
If there's an event
trucks
going on,
can't
they
do
can
that.
go there, right? Yeah. All right. Well, so that's the budget. A lot of both short-term issues, and the one that Mayor Burchell, when he was on, he would always reference is, again, the state aid issue. You've got
Oh, yeah.
River
yeah.
Falls getting literally 10 times the state aid that
Exactly.
Hudson gets.
Right.
And that's continuing.
Continuing. It's an archaic formula, state aid, just an archaic formula. I can't remember when it was developed, but it has not, from what I understand, it hasn't been looked at in some period of time. It certainly hasn't benefited us at all. And yeah.
It almost penalizes success.
That's exactly what it did, and we're being penalized for our business park. Ironically, though, you've got River Falls that's expanding their business park footprint, coming way north right now, and so in fact they've said they want to come all the way up to our southern border.
Yep.
And
They're getting a lot of state aid to do it.
And yeah, exactly. And of course they got the college there, and they're getting aid for the college as well. So
Well, that's one thing when we're looking at on the school board that I serve on, and we're looking at state aid, and we're looking at another $2 to $2.5 million cut in general aid that might be made up somewhat by categorical aid increase, but we look at our bonding rates, and obviously we've borrowed a lot of money recently, for the construction, and we've got one of the highest bond ratings in the state. The only thing that prevents us from having that AAA rating is the amount of commercial and industrial, property. And it's a formula and so forth. And like you said, we could add 6 more housing developments. It's not going to have the impact and not going to increase our bond rating. So, but that would require, again, annexation. So business park number 4, basically.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, supply and demand, and it can't be answered at this point whether Hudson is going to meet River Falls at some point or push back, but River Falls is clearly pushing our way.
Right. Yes, they are, and it would be nice for us to be able to add to create our next business park
and have more local jobs so that we don't have
Exactly.
as many people leaving town. So,
That's right.
Ending on a note that going from dollars and cents to emotions and relationships and so forth. One of the things that's been in the news recently, I think some well-meaning folks introducing resolutions, asking the council to adopt. And I use the plural because it's not just one resolution on tolerance or inclusiveness. Is it inclusivity or inclusive?
Inclusivity, yeah.
Yeah. But it's also other resolutions as well, just overall trying to maybe push back against sanctuary cities or whatever. And so I know that this is something that's been brought to the council. You're the mayor and literally don't have a vote unless it's to break a tie.
Right.
So how is this being dealt with? I know that I was at a meeting where you referred it to committee for review.
Right.
And so how do you see this shaking out? Is this something that the city wants to be in the business of, is seeing resolutions on a frequent or regular basis?
I can't speak for the rest of the council. I can certainly speak for myself. I don't think personally that it is our business to be involved in making political statements at the city council level. And I think it is a Pandora's box. I think that once that door is open, where does it stop? And you've referenced a couple resolutions that are there right now that people are very emotional about, very adamant about, and without getting into the
merits.
Thank you. The merits of either one of them. Suffice to say, anybody that paid attention to our city attorney, Catherine, on the inclusivity resolution, raised some serious legal issues, which is why I referred that particular resolution to committee.
Right.
And the committees actually sent it to 3 committees, each of which have a piece of the language that was in there. So the second resolution that came along was in response to a suggestion at the county level that the county become a sanctuary county, and the resolution is saying we want to make a statement that we're not going to be part of a sanctuary county, we're not going to be a sanctuary city. That one also referenced some things that had a financial impact, and so I referred that, financial as well as public safety. And so I referred that to Finance and the Public Safety Committee. The council is going to have to determine who they want to be, frankly. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like I said, I don't want to be in the business of taking up resolutions that take up a lot of people's time, city staff time as well, not just us debating,
right,
the merits, but city staff time as well. For political statements that can change when...
Well, can have a financial impact, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But these things can change with the winds of time as well,
right,
from election to election.
And then you get to stop, where's the logical stopping point?
Well, and that's...
You start talking about First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment.
Exactly. So, bottom line, Jamie, is that one of the council members turned to me with the sanctuary city amendment that came in and said, "You're not going to put this on the agenda, are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I am, because I'm not going to be put in a position where I'm going to pick and choose what's going to go on the agenda. This is, if we're going to do one, we're going to do them all. So it's an all or none proposition, in my opinion. If the council does not want to be taking up resolutions, then let's just make a statement that a policy that we are not
It really
going to
is
take any of them up."
time consuming when you think of, what's the function of city government.
Right.
And some firmly and fervently believe that that is part of city government, is to protect the image of the community as being an inclusive community and so forth. But
Right.
I guess the proof is in the pudding as far as how you go about it, the wording that's used. Where people were parsing those statements out and unsure of what the impact would be, and in the end, it's how we actually treat people who come to Hudson.
That's exactly
in the end. That it's not something that you're going to legislate, is to be nice to everybody.
Right. It was an interesting meeting in that I think that there were some very eloquent speakers on both sides of the issue, and there were a number of people that had said exactly what you said, that this isn't about making a statement, this is about behavior, and a statement isn't going to regulate behavior at all. If we're going to be considered a friendly, inclusive community, that's how we deal with people on a day-to-day basis. It has nothing to do with what your sign might say as you enter our boundaries, our border.
Right. I think of resolutions, and typically resolutions should be commendations for people who have served the city for 40 years, or,
Sure. Yep.
or
Championship seasons at
right.
the high school.
Yes, and commemorating those type of things.
Sure.
But I guess I appreciate what you're trying to do there, and hopefully you're able to come to a place. I mean, we can't be the first city to have to deal with this.
Oh no, won't be the last.
And won't be the last, but we have to have some kind of policy on how these are dealt with, and
I agree.
so forth. Well, anyway, I think that we've come towards the end of our time, unless there's something else that you wanted to make sure that folks are aware of in the city of Hudson.
No, I think just pay attention to the budget. Talk to your council folks, but most importantly, to try to dig into what is being proposed for the budgets for each of the departments, and try to get a feel for the bind we're in, because we are, and understand that I promise people I'm going to do everything I can to keep taxes down, and I'm trying to do that. I think the number of the things that I've done are moving toward fulfilling that promise. As you pointed out, I don't have a vote on the council, and all I can do is weigh in with my opinion and go from there. But and also, I want to thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk. It's always good to talk with you.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for coming on, Mayor.
Thank you. And anybody that wants to respond to this and talk to me, feel free to call me.
Well, I
email
like
me.
that open door policy. I think it's that kind of transparency is important, especially in a community of ours. I think we've got some great traditions, and it's been the community I've lived in half of my life, and we've got a lot of great things here, and we want to just continue to make it better. So
I love this town. We moved here because we love this town. Our two youngest kids went to school here. Our grandkids are here in town. And this is where we want to be. We want to keep this a great community.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your efforts, and encourage people to get involved, whether it's to contact your council people, the mayor, but also respond to those surveys when you have a survey
Right.
on parking and so forth. Get involved, stay involved, and that's how we make this a great community. So thank you for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, and keep watching.